Welcome to the only daily podcast focusing on compliance news of the day. Each morning, start your day with a cup of coffee and Tom Fox, the voice of compliance, to hear about 4 of the top compliance, corruption, or leadership stories you will need to start your day. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
First, a word from our sponsor. The Daily Compliance News for February 21, 2022, the Credit Suisse Papers edition. And we begin with that story from the New York Times as a huge data leak of over 18,000 accounts exposed how Credit Suisse served dictators, spies, and criminal elements to help them hide money basically from 1940s well into the 2010s. Now, these leaks did not have current accounts, or rather the bank's current operations, but it was a massive breach and really shows the type of business Credit Suisse was engaged in at that time, those times. Credit Suisse, of course, rejects the allegations and inferences about its business practices and said that those accounts were at a time where laws, practices, and expectations were very different than they are now. Nevertheless, a huge black eye. Credit Suisse is in deep trouble already, and both with Swiss banking authorities, and I'm sure the U.S. banking authorities are looking at them as well. Next up, we had an FCPA settlement with KT Corp. South Korea's largest telecom has agreed to pay $6.3 million to the SEC over alleged bribe payments in South Vietnam Vietnam and South Korea. The weak accounting controls enabled the company's employees to establish slush funds, some in physical stacks of cash, which were used to pay public officials. KT neither admitted nor denied the SEC's allegations, but consented to the penalty. The SEC said KT had violated the books and records and accounting provisions of the FCPA. I'll be writing about this in a blog post this week, so check out the full story when my blog goes up. The Sackler family is back in the news as they have increased their proposal to settle the massive opioid settlement from $4.33 billion to $6 billion. It's still the Sacklers are still trying to get personal liability waivers for all of the Sackler families, and they're trying to use this increased money to help buy that. Whether that's going to work with the bankruptcy judge, it's not clear, because the bankruptcy court, I think, was more concerned less about the amount, but more about the individual waivers of liabilities of parties who are not part of the bankruptcy. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens, although the Sacklers have appealed the district court judge's decision to the Second Circuit, seeking to reinstate protections for family members. And finally, if you are a nacho fan, or if you like chips at your local or favorite Mexican restaurant, the next store is one that you will certainly be happy about, as the U.S. has lifted the ban on Mexican avocado import. And finally, it's President's Day, so happy birthday, George Washington and Abraham Lincoln. The Daily Compliance News is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network and a proud member of C-Suite Radio. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you'll join me again tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.